Okay. So the first question is, what are the risks of not acknowledging mistakes or transgressions in families, intimate relationships, work settings?
I mean, anytime you don't set boundaries or, you're not holding yourself accountable or other people, they continue to do the same thing over and over again, and you continue to have the same problems. So it becomes a pattern until you either set your boundaries or cut the person off or, something along those lines. So it brings more problems.
Does. Yeah, I agree. I think once you ignore conflict for too long, it just builds up and it just is worse. It's better to nip those things in the bud. And it's also a thing with boundaries again, right? Like if
Mhm.
you don't set the first conflict and then you blow up on someone, 10 times later, they're gonna be like, whoa, I thought this was okay.
Yeah,
So also part of it.
very true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just makes it worse, like long term, than like if
Hmm.
you were just to deal with it then.
Yeah. I
Okay.
always say, like, people will do as much as you allow. So if you're allowing someone to continue to do things that, like, include conflict or, something that you don't like, then they're going to keep doing it.
The same as in work settings. If you let them slack off, little by little, they just start slacking off more and more, and you end up doing more work.
It's true. And same thing even with your manager. I don't know if you guys have ever had a bad manager or something, but if you let them treat you a certain way, they'll just continue to do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I also feel like as humans, like we don't like the unknown. Like we don't
Mm.
like to not know things. So if you don't like fill in like what happened and address what happened, the other person's gonna do it for you and create the story and like create a narrative that's not true. We've done
Mhm.
it and it's happened to us. So I think like just addressing conflict helps people from not jumping to conclusions in like all settings.
I agree for sure.
Yeah. Okay. When might it be appropriate and even beneficial to use this strategy? So it's like the never apologizing strategy, like the not looking back or like acknowledging your behavior from like yesterday is kind of what
Mhm.
they laid it out as.
I think it depends on the relationship. Like if you don't care anymore, then you don't want to address it. Like
That's
sometimes
true.
you just have to let people like
Be who
see
they
you as
are.
that way and just leave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think so too.
I'm trying to think of like a specific example.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like when it might be appropriate, like and relates to like our lives.
You know what? Maybe in a work, a bad work environment.
Yeah.
You've heard of stories where it's so bad and so toxic that people literally have to walk out of work and they just never go back. So maybe that's an example.
Yeah, or like if you're just done with a friendship or you're like you've decided like someone in your family is like the last straw, like
Yeah, exactly. Or like a toxic relationship and when, someone's in a really bad space with someone and all they want to do, they just leave and they never look back, they run away. So,
Yeah.
I
I
think
think another, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think another case might be like when you know like someone's like going through something or like has like personal stuff going on and so like they kind of like take it out on you or like cause like this conflict and you're like, oh, like
yeah.
I'm here, like they're having a bad day, like let's just let this kind of go.
Hmm. Just kind of like stay away from them for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, does a person's status affect his or her ability to rely on this strategy? I think it definitely does. I think it's a lot easier for people in like leadership or like management to kind of just like ignore something that happened because who's
Yeah.
gonna reprimand them,
Hmm.
versus like if you were to do it and like your manager would most likely be like, hey, like this
Yeah,
happened, we need to address it.
exactly. I think so too. Yeah. I
And
mean,
also like poor managers or like leaders, like they're able to blame their employees for
yeah,
like mistakes that
exactly.
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And their status, yeah, their status definitely has an effect. Um, because again, people will do as much as you allow. So if you have a manager that's treating their employees terribly, but you don't do anything about it, they're going to continue to do it. So, they take that to their head, and that they are like a manager, and that they feel like they can do whatever they want. And I feel like that's when we see a lot of those issues at work.
Yeah, and you see it a lot with people that just like don't like to take accountability.
Yeah.
Like if you're taught like that they don't need, like you don't need to take accountability, or you've grown up in that setting, or you've been handed a lot of things, then you're not going to take accountability, and
Yep.
you're just not going to even know when to like realize that it's your fault.
Yeah, exactly. And then it turns into people who are narcissists.
Yeah.
And play the victim.
Yeah.
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 Yes, literally.
I
just-
kind of also think like if you apologize, you're kind of just showing weakness. So a person's status does like it makes a big difference because usually when you apologize something, you kind of feel at fault for something. So I think that's why when leaders don't apologize, it's kind of because they feel like they don't have to. Because they know
Yeah,
if
like
they do, yeah, you know what I
True.
mean? They feel like if they do, then they're at fault for something. But
Yeah, or they feel, yeah, exactly. Like they feel like,
they're accepting the blame.
yeah,
Mhm.
That kind of
Yep.
leads me to like another point too, where like one of my biggest pet peeves in the workplace is when people try to like dwell on your mistake and be like, if you hadn't done this, then we would, like, whereas
I have had that. Oh my
yes,
gosh.
and it
Yes.
happens in the workplace a lot. So if you just like take accountability and you say, I know I did this, let's move on, like that's one of the boundaries you have to set. So that's like
Literally.
the opposite effect of like probably why people that are higher up don't like to take accountability, because they know that people under them will dwell on that.
Yeah. Yeah, literally. That's true, actually. Yeah. Just to kind of like benefit themselves. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous for like project management or something, because that's a career path I'm interested in too. And that's literally, they take blame for everything. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Like, or they don't at all. Like,
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. The
my,
opposite.
my program managers will literally be like, well, that's a contracts job, or like that's engineering. Like,
Oh my
my
God.
fault, like they didn't do their job.
Yeah.
My biggest thing that I've realized too, like about the whole accountability, especially like working like in contracts and like with like government contracts and like international like customers and stuff, is how little people want to sign stuff, like put their name on something.
It's
They're
so
like, oh, I'm not going to be held accountable for something in writing, like with my name on it.
No, that's true. I used to work with real estate contracts actually, and I saw that too.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know. It's yes.
I work in public relations, and it's a lot of business to business. So I'm kind of like that middleman. So I'll literally be getting like pulled two separate ways. Like it's their fault. It's their fault. And I'm like, one of y'all needs to take accountability so we can move forward.
Right.
You're like, I'm
Whoever
literally,
has it, send it to me. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's funny.
Okay, the next question is, what are the consequences of the strategy if it is used in situations where others clearly see it as inappropriate? I think like if a manager or like, like a project manager or whatever, like your boss like isn't taking accountability or like places blame like on you and your team, like you become like super frustrated and like you feel like you're not valued. So I think
Yeah,
that's really a consequence of them
yeah.
like not taking accountability or like never apologizing for like their mistakes.
And you always have the possibility of being fired, so you could lose your job
Yeah.
depending on how bad it was, or you know how you reacted to the situation. If you really didn't take accountability and you were just like super rude about it, you could literally risk your job.
yeah, I think you don't want to do this like in situations that involve HR where you
Oh my
kind of
God.
look sensitive.
Oh,
Mhm.
So
Very true.
yeah.
HR usually gets involved when they already know who to blame.
Oh my
Or when they want somebody, like they just want to blame somebody and they're not even looking into it. It's bad.
Or you
Yeah.
maybe don't want to like do it when like that the person isn't gonna like move past it if you apologize or you take accountability.
Yeah.
But out in any situation, like if taking accountability is gonna cost you more,
Mhm.
Sometimes it's better to just be like, I don't know who did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
Oh my gosh, no, literally. And yeah, and depending too, yeah, because if you do have a manager who like just makes you feel terrible about mistakes that you make or something, and then you're like, oh my God, I made a mistake. Of course, you're not going to want to take accountability because you already know that they're going to like maybe yell at you, make you feel terrible about it, and you're like, I already know I made a mistake. I already don't feel good about it. I'm not going to like, I don't want you to just make me feel worse about it. I know my mistake.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to be proactive and like come up with a solution and then bring it to them and be like,
Yeah.
listen, I did this, but it became a good thing because I did this.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Or even like as a manager, like from a different like viewpoint, being like, okay, like this happened. How, like, what is your plan? Like, let's work through like a plan versus being like,
True.
yeah, you messed up. How are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
That's
always the managers though that they know that you're doing stuff and they're like, oh, well, that's not the right way to do it, but they don't fix it or address it until somebody gets them in trouble. Then they get in
Mhm.
trouble, so then they get us in trouble. And then we're just like, oh, well, we were never told otherwise. So how were we supposed to know?
Yeah,
My
that's so true.
favorite when a manager does something, like it makes a change or like makes a decision and doesn't tell anyone. And so then
Oh
we're
my
like,
God.
oh,
Oh, yeah.
like this happened or like this wasn't working or something. And they're like, oh yeah, like we don't do that anymore. You're
Yeah.
like,
That drives me nuts.
"Eh?"
Yeah. And when
Requires
I'm
better
like thinking
communication.
about all the mistakes I've made at work, it's usually like not to accountability, but it's usually because I wasn't, I didn't understand it or it wasn't communicated to me
It's true.
properly, or I just
Yeah.
didn't get the memo. Like most of the time, a mistake doesn't just come from one person. It's usually like a supply chain
It's
type domino
so
effect.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, at the end of the day, if I don't know something, how can I do it properly?
Right.
Or if
Okay.
they don't
And
train you
then,
right.
Hmm?
okay, the last question is finally, do you personally have any experience with this strategy? Have you employed it? Has someone else employed it with you?
My God, I have someone that so I when I was managing the med spa, they hired someone who she would lie all the time and like would call out of work for just random reasons and stuff, which okay, at some point whatever, but she would lie about it and then she would like say that I said one thing and then tell our boss, something completely different. And I'm like, I literally have text messages of you telling me, why are you trying to get me in trouble as your manager or stuff like that. So I have absolutely had people that don't take accountability who like lie and just don't care about the job. They just
Yeah.
don't care. Like drama.
I've, I've personally like been in a situation where like I didn't think what I did was wrong, or I thought that what I did was misunderstood, and it was like one of those like gang mentality situations where like three people like I wasn't around and they kind of just decided what I did was wrong. And so,
Horrible.
yeah, and so which it's fine. I've probably done the same to other people, but it was just one of those things where I was like, I'm not apologizing for what I did because I don't I don't think I owe you an apology. And so I
Mhm.
kind of just pushed it off and I kind of did my best to show them that what they were accusing me of wasn't my character. And I
Yeah.
almost apologizing just negated what they had accused me of. And it took a couple of months to gain their trust back, but like everything's good now and like
Yeah.
it hasn't happened again. And I'm like actually proud of my decision to have done that because
Good.
I didn't have to like put my character on the back end, to keep a
Mhm.
friendship.
That's really, really good. Yeah. That's smart, actually.
I mean, I think you have to be strategic about it. I wouldn't recommend doing it every
No,
time you get, but in this
yeah.
one instance, I was like, no, this isn't worth it to
Like
me.
when you know you're right and these people are just dedicated to misunderstanding you, I think that's the perfect scenario. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not apologizing because I don't feel that I did something wrong. I acknowledge the way you feel and whatever, but you need to know my intentions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
really.
I think like my example would be like I had a girl like on an email thread, like with multiple people like emailing me being like, you need to do this, like why haven't you done this? Like da 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 for something that's like not even my job. Like I was
Mhm.
helping out. And I told one of the other girls on the email thread, I was like, did you read this? And she was like, yeah, no, that's not okay. And so she like replied all and like CC'd her manager and was like, I just want to like thank Abby for like all she's doing to like help us out, like da da da.
Yeah.
And then like everyone else was like, oh yeah, thank you, thank you. And the girl was like, oh yeah, like Abby's the best. Like, thanks so much. And I was like, did you read your previous email?
No,
And,
literally, you're
like,
like,
the
what's going on?
manager like asked me about it, like if something was going on, and like the other girl was standing there and she was like, what email? She's like, no,
Oh my
Abby's great, and just kind of like walked away. And I was like, okay,
You're like, interesting.
I'm just gonna smile,
Yeah.
just say it's okay because this
You
is
feel
not
dumb, you know?
not worth it.
It's a good way to go about it, though. That was cool of the other girl to do that for you.
I know, seriously.
Well, she's like retiring in like 2 weeks, so she's like, what do I
Wow.
have to lose?
I love that. That's great.
Love it.
She's all hell breaks loose with her. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah. Like, I don't care anymore. What are
Yeah.
they gonna do? Fire me?
Yeah, literally, just like fire me.
Exactly.
Okay, that was it, and we reached 20 minutes.
Really good. Awesome. All right.